Get out the way.
You're listening to Mature Allure. Here, we chat about self-care, relationships, careers, and all the things living a mature life includes. I'm your host, Sherri O. Welcome.
Welcome to Mature Allure. Today we have Miranda Bryant on, and I'm so excited that she's here. She is a menopause coach, but I'll let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about her. Go right ahead, Miranda.
Hi, Sherri. Thanks so much for having me here today. It's such a pleasure.
Welcome.
So I founded and run Bryant Growth Coaching, and I focus on women in middle age, particularly perimenopause and menopause. I've been doing this just since February of this year, but I've been a life coach for a couple of years now. And really decided to focus particularly on women in perimenopause and menopause, in part because in the United States there are so few resources. And I honestly think it's a crime. I'm in menopause myself and wanted to support other women who are in the same experience to help them through it. So that's what I do. I help women through perimenopause and menopause.
Wow, that's amazing. Can you tell us the difference between perimenopause and menopause?
I sure can. The easiest way to explain it is to start first with menopause. So menopause is when we've gone for 12 months without a period. And I do mean 12 months. So if it's like 11 months and 14 days and you get your period, the clock has to start over. In fact, that happened to me. I didn't enter menopause until 55. And I thought I was going to enter it at 54. I was at 11 months and many, many days. And I got my period on my birthday of all things. It had to start the countdown all over. So 12 full months without a period is menopause. Perimenopause is everything leading up to it. And it usually starts in a person's 40s. It can last from 4 years to 10 years. And that's the latest readings I've been doing have indicated that the last 2 years of perimenopause is actually more difficult than menopause itself. So all the symptoms are rearing in those last 2 years of perimenopause. The only way let me restate this. Perimenopause is a little sneaky. It's a little hard to say I'm in perimenopause because the symptoms can sneak up on you. So for instance, some symptoms are like anxiety, depression, mood swings and irritability. Your period length is changing. The number of periods you have is changing. But the reason that it's difficult to pinpoint when it starts is a lot of women are very busy. They're not taking notice of all of these changes at the same time. And some of these changes can be brought on by other things. So for instance, I have hypothyroidism. I was diagnosed at the age of 25. A lot of the symptoms to perimenopause and menopause are the same as hypothyroidism. So for me, perimenopause was like, what is this? It's the same that I've been dealing with for decades. So it is a little bit sneaky, but eventually you shift into menopause. And then you're in menopause for one day, really. It's just the day that you mark your 12 months without a period. Everything after that is considered postmenopause. And that can last from 4 to 10 years, somewhere in there. It's different for every person.
I was going to ask, I know you mentioned perimenopause usually starts around in your 40s. Mm-hmm. I was going to ask, is there a particular time when menopause kicks in, age?
Yeah, great question. The average age of menopause is 51. But in my case, it was 55. So yeah, they say overall between 45 and 55, you can enter into perimenopause. And the average age is 51 for menopause.
Okay, so you mentioned some of the symptoms for perimenopause. Mm-hmm. What are symptoms of menopause?
I mean, they're not totally dissimilar, right? Except you're not having periods. The longer you get into menopause, the more likely you're going to experience vaginal symptoms. So, like the wall of the vagina is becoming thinner because you don't have that beautiful hormone of estrogen. And so that may lead to like painful intercourse, a dry, sometimes itchy vagina. And those things can be treated for sure. There's hormone replacement therapy is one. There's also a vaginal pill. You actually insert it into your nether regions
Okay.
to help. So I would say that's probably one of the most significant differences between the two stages. You're more likely to have vaginal issues. And the other is you're more in menopause, more likely to start having problems with osteoporosis, thinning of the bones, which is why menopause coaches like myself recommend weight-bearing exercises, lifting weights. It doesn't have to be like you're in the gym, like lifting hundreds
Strong
of weights.
woman.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be hundreds of pounds. Just simple dumbbells at home can do the trick, but it's to help the strength of our bones. And all these symptoms are caused, Sherri, because the hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone in our bodies are decreasing. Those hormones are there to help us with our reproductive stage of life. And when that ends, all those hormones start to deplete. And estrogen is the one that we will notice the most when it starts leaving our body, because it drives most of the things that lead us to have a beautiful life.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things you're just like, I don't know. Like, even for me, and we'll talk about this a little bit later because I'm very curious. You know, I'm 53 years old. So, and I had a partial hysterectomy. So I don't know. And then people have often said, well, you'll kind of have a general idea of when you may go into menopause by the women in your family. Most of the women in my family, like my mom, my aunts, things like that, they had whole hysterectomies.
Okay.
And that was during a time when anything that happened or went wrong or a fibroid here or something, the doctors were like, oh, let's get rid of everything. So before the age of 50, usually in their mid 40s or so, their whole reproductive system was gone. So there was no way to really judge it.
Yeah.
So that's why I ask so much about the symptoms, so people can be aware and start seeing things, because I'm like, oh, well, am I starting or have I started, or
right?
I can't really tell. So are there symptoms that may not, you mentioned osteoporosis. Are there symptoms that people might not be thinking of as hot flashes or, my period is every month, but my bones ache. You know what I mean? Like, are there symptoms that people might not know are symptoms?
Possibly. You mentioned bones and muscles, like muscle pain and joint pain are symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. So I don't know if people often equate those things. Sometimes, sadly, medical professionals don't equate those things either. Dry skin, thinning hair, even losing hair, that's an aspect of it. And then I think the others are more commonly known. So night sweats, hot flashes, weight gain around our middle region in particular. Pre-diabetes is quite common for women in perimenopause and menopause. Painful sexual intercourse becomes an issue, anxiety and depression. And here's something I should point out, since you're asking, what are the things that can happen that we don't often equate with perimenopause and menopause? plummeting or decreasing self-esteem and confidence. And again, this is related to hormones, the fluctuating hormones, but it's also related to the period in our life. So a lot of women in middle age are becoming empty nesters. Maybe they're retiring. Wish I could retire, but not yet. They might start having different feelings about who they are as a person. Their identity is changing a little bit. So it's not uncommon for women in their 40s to say, you know what, this career that I've fought tooth and nail to build no longer inspires me. I'm bored by it. Or you're being overlooked at work because you're no longer the shining new rising star. The new tranche of younger folks have come in. And also, you could start feeling a little bit, I'm just going to use the word dismayed, maybe with your partner. If it's someone you've been with for decades, maybe suddenly the way they breathe or the way they chew is just driving you nuts. Or maybe it's bigger than that. Like you actually don't feel like you're able to connect with your partner as much or be able to connect with your friends as much. And this is because of estrogen. It's also because we have decades of experience and life behind us that has us knowing what we will tolerate and what we won't. And we're more likely to say, this relationship doesn't serve me, or it doesn't serve me like it used to. Something has to change. All of those changes can really have a hit on your self-esteem and your confidence if you don't know how to navigate that. And not many people do. I mean, how would we? How would we know to navigate all those things happening all at the same time? And, you mentioned your family, looking to your family for their experience about menopause. One of the things that I think is most tragic is that the generation before us didn't have access to hormone replacement therapy. There was a very large study on hormone replacement therapy that was poorly designed. And then worse, so the results were poorly analyzed and understood. It led society at large to believe that the hormone replacement therapy would increase the risk of breast cancer astronomically, which wasn't an accurate analysis of the results. As a result, everyone panicked who was on hormone replacement therapy and stopped taking it. Doctors stopped prescribing it. Medical schools stopped teaching about menopause and hormone replacement therapy. So the generation before us also just stopped talking about it. There was like no community conversation among women. It just shut down everything. So a lot of us who are in our 40s and 50s actually don't have someone to talk to who's older than us in our family, our aunts, our mothers, our grandma. Well, let me leave the grandmothers aside, because they didn't have a choice. They just had to muscle through it on their own. No support or relief from the medical community, and not even really from their own social networks. It was taboo to discuss. So in some ways, it's kind of a miracle that you and I are here on a podcast talking openly about perimenopause and menopause.
Well, so are they trying to fix that? Like with the hormone replacement therapy now? Is it something that they're taking another look at and saying, okay,
yes,
this
absolutely
could be useful. Okay.
Yes, I'm on hormone replacement therapy. So I take 3 different hormones, and the delivery method for each is different. For me, I take estradiol, which is estrogen, and it's a tiny little patch I place on my stomach, and I change it twice a week. I take testosterone cream on my wrists, rub it together. You can also do your upper inner arms or your upper inner thighs where your skin is thin. And then I take micronized progesterone in the form of a capsule at bedtime, because one of the side benefits of progesterone administered in a capsule form like that is it helps you sleep as well.
Oh,
So I'm
You've noticed the difference?
Oh my goodness. I sleep so well, and I haven't always. Sleep has been difficult for me, especially during very stressful times in my life. But I take the progesterone, which helps, and then I also take magnesium glycinate. Am I saying that right? Let me just look that up. I have it on my screen here. Yeah, magnesium glycinate. There's two different kinds of magnesium, but the glycinate, your body absorbs it more readily, and that also helps you go to bed or to sleep, excuse me. So I take that at bedtime too. And it's been a game changer for me. It really has.
Wow. Well, are there any tests that women can take, let's say they're in perimenopause or even prior to perimenopause, that will kind of give them an idea when menopause may set in or could be setting in?
Yes and no. So I often hear medical practitioners taking blood draws from their patients to look at the levels of the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. But the truth is, it's not necessary. When you're in perimenopause, your hormones are fluctuating wildly every day. So you can take a test one day and it can say X, and the next day it's going to say Y. So really, good medical professionals are simply asking you about your symptoms. So there's really no true way that I'm aware of that you can predict precisely when you're going to go from perimenopause to menopause. You really just have to pay attention to your symptoms, honestly, and find a doctor who will listen to you. Unfortunately, because of the large research study that I talked about earlier that was poorly designed and poorly analyzed, a lot of medical practitioners don't know much about menopause or hormone replacement therapy. So if you go to a medical professional and you talk to them about your symptoms and they dismiss you for whatever reason, go find a different medical professional. Seriously.
Yeah.
And ask them what their training is, because there are professionals who have gone out of their way to find extra training that makes them an expert in hormones. And that's really what you need.
So, but back to, like I said, if somebody has had a partial hysterectomy, because I know with the hysterectomy, you go of course, straight into menopause. Like you said, there's no more period and none of that.
Mm-hmm.
With a partial hysterectomy, is there some way you can tell? Like, I'll use myself as an example. Am I in perimenopause? I don't know. Like, I really can't tell. I don't know. I mean, yeah, sometimes I get hot, but am I hot because I'm having flashes or, you know what I mean? Like, how would I be? Is there a way that somebody can tell when they're starting to be in perimenopause?
Well, again, it's going to be based on symptoms. There's no test. I'm sure there's someone out there who will tell you there's a test, but I wouldn't pay for it. Again, because the hormones are fluctuating all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
When you say partial hysterectomy, do you mean the uterus was removed, but the fallopian tubes and the ovaries remained intact?
Yes.
Yeah. So the ovaries are what produce the hormones. And so if you have your ovaries, you might not yet be in perimenopause or menopause. And again, you just have to pay attention to the symptoms. If your guests would like, they can go to my website and sign up for my newsletter. When they do so, they get sent a free downloadable PDF that lists all the menopause symptoms. And the reason I made this is so that you can print it out, check off the symptoms you're having, take it to your doctor or healthcare provider and say, these are the symptoms I'm having, so that you're less likely to be dismissed as a woman who's just complaining because she's gained some weight, for instance, or a woman who might have depression and all women have depression in middle age, some baloney like that. You can show this to them. If they dismiss you, find another practitioner. So you can track your symptoms using this tracker.
So give us your website address. And I'm going to do that as by the way.
Okay, yeah. It's my last name. So Bryant, BRYANT, growthcoaching.com.
Okay. And you are a menopause coach. Tell us
Yes.
what that entails.
Yeah. So I'm trained as a business coach and a life coach. And life coaches really can pursue any particular niche that they're interested in, right? So some become habit coaches or mindset coaches, weight loss coaches. I decided to focus on menopause for the reasons that I stated earlier. So in addition to being trained as a life coach, I have special training to be a menopause coach. I was trained along with other women from a menopause coach trainer, specialist, expert out of England named Lauren Chiren, Chiren, and her business is called Women of a Certain Stage. So we went through training with her and learned all sorts of things about menopause. And we administered to a couple of practice clients, each of us, Lauren's menopause program. So when you work with me, I administer to you that same menopause program. And it usually takes 8 weeks, meeting once a week for 1 hour. And we go through the different elements about how menopause can affect you. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic serum. It really does come down to lifestyle issues. Interestingly, I think that sometimes disappoints people because they want that pill that they just swallow or that vaccination that they just roll up their sleeve and get. But the way that I like to look at it is because the best way to get through perimenopause and menopause is through lifestyle changes. Those lifestyle changes are free. There's no additional expense. And the things that you learn through working with me can last for the rest of your life. It's not like I teach you things that are only applicable for 1 year. It lasts you your whole life. And if you have children or a partner and you're involved in their care, the things you learn can also help them. So that's how I choose to see the fact that really the truest intervention is lifestyle changes.
I was on your Facebook page last night, and what is it, Menopause Moxie? Is that the page?
Right. Moxie. Yes, Menopause Moxie.
And you mentioned something about, is it a cuddle coach?
Yeah, I did.
I've never heard of a cuddle coach, which I think is really cute. And what does a cuddle coach do?
Yeah. There's a couple different ways you can do it. If you're more likely to find cuddle coaches in larger metropolitan areas. And the short answer is they cuddle with you in a safe, mutually agreeable way. So the way that I do it, I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is adjacent to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And there's, to my knowledge, just one cuddle therapist here, a beautiful woman. She has a very long consent form, which dictates what you need to do. Brush your teeth and shower before you come. Do not be drinking before you come. And you're not allowed to touch each other's bikini areas, as she calls them. Any place a bikini would go, man or woman, woman mostly, I guess, you wouldn't touch those parts. She asks you what you want. How do you want to be held, or would you like to hold her? And in what way? And she has ideas also to help. So I love spooning. I love being the little spoon. So we often spoon, and she, puts one of her arms up over my shoulder so that it's not touching the top bikini area. And it's really a way for me to receive, because I don't, in the way that my life is currently constructed, have a way to receive. And physical touch is so good for us, physically, emotionally, mentally. And since I don't have access to that in my life right now, I decided to hire it out.
It's actually really cute. I mean, it sounds, how would that, I mean, and this is probably a really obvious question, how would that help in menopause?
Yeah.
How would that help?
Well, in menopause, as I mentioned earlier, because our hormones are fluctuating, we experience sometimes irritability, anxiety, and depression. And those things often can be exacerbated if you're lonely. And so I experience loneliness. I live alone. I actually really like living alone, frankly. And I have a beautiful little dog who gives me all sorts of cuddles, but he's not a person.
Yeah.
And so cuddling for me keeps that anxiety and depression at bay, because I'm having those endorphins, that oxytocin that you get when you're physically touching an animal or a person. And so the short of it is, I think it can help with your mental health that can take a hit during this transition in life.
So if someone were interested in contacting you about being their menopause coach, what exactly is like the process, just to give a little bit of an overview of what they would get from you?
Yeah. Well, you can go to my website, bryantgrowthcoaching.com, and reach me through there, or you can go to Facebook and search in the group section for Menopause Moxie, Moxie, and find me there. I'll arrange to have like a 10 or 15 minute call with you, simply to learn, very top level, what's happening with you. Can I help you? Because sometimes it's beyond me. I had a potential client a few weeks ago who had rheumatoid arthritis, was disabled, had fibromyalgia, and borderline personality disorder. And that, as a package, is more than I am trained to work with. So in that case, I wasn't able to help that person. So after that initial call, if I can help you, I schedule another call for an hour just to gather more information. We talk about how we would work together. And then after that, it's typically a series of 8 one-week sessions, each of which are an hour long. And that's how it works.
I forgot about this question because you did mention the weight gain around the mid area, menopause belly.
Yeah.
So that's a real thing.
Absolutely. It's a real thing. Yeah. It's unfortunate that it's a real thing. What happens is, as we age, our metabolism slows down. We're less able to hang on to muscle. And our insulin, which is a hormone, can start to increase unless we're really watching our sugar intake. And unfortunately, the weight, instead of going to our thighs and our bums like it did when we were younger, it starts to come around the middle. Now, I haven't yet read why that is. Why does it go to the middle? But I do know that if you have that middle tire, it's a sign that you have insulin resistance, which, is pre-diabetes. So if you have a waistline of 35 inches or more, you're also, if you're a woman, you're also subject to a whole host of maladies and conditions, more likely to have cardiovascular disease and these things. So again, it's the hormones. Dang it. But it is truly a thing. It really is.
Wow. Oh, well, as we're nearing the end, if you could share some advice or insight, what women can do to kind of embrace or deal with this inevitable stage of life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's many pieces of advice, but in the interest of time, I'll just keep it to 2. One is try to talk to people about it. Talk to your friends. talk to your family members, including your children. Tailor it for their age, of course, but it's a big change, and people who live with you or who love you need to understand at some level what's happening with you. You can't change it. Anyone with a uterus is going to go through menopause. And my second bit of advice is talk to a medical professional about the options that you have available for you. Hormone replacement therapy isn't for everyone, but there are over-the-counter supplements that your doctor may be able to help you with. And again, I can't say this loudly enough. If your medical professional dismisses you, wants to write you off as a middle-aged lady who's depressed and gaining weight, go find someone else. There's lots of virtual doctor appointments now, too, in the field of menopause. So if you live in a small town or a rural area, you can still find virtual support.
Well, that's another good question. Let me just piggyback off of that a little bit. When you say the medical professional and you're using your doctor, let's say OBGYN, at some point you're moving past a little bit the OBGYN. You're moving, when I say that, like they're used to babies and pregnancy. That's the focus. And you walk in their office and you see all the babies on the wall and the pregnant women and all of that. What is the next step? Is there another doctor or somebody who you should think about who specializes more in middle-aged women?
Yeah. Well, I know a person who found a gynecologist as opposed to an OBGYN. Okay. Didn't need the OB part, didn't need somebody who knows how to birth babies, just needed a gynecologist. So there are medical practitioners who are simply gynecologists. Another is to look for, so I see a nurse practitioner that my doctor referred me to, who's an expert in hormones. My doctor, luckily, is very candid with me and just said, I don't do hormone replacement therapy. I didn't ask why. I presume it's because she's not trained in it, but she is networked enough that she could refer me to someone who can do that. So I might start by just Googling like hormone experts in my area. And don't worry so much about the title. What you're trying to find is a hormone expert.
Ah, that is very good to know. Well, if you could, at one last time, share your information, how someone can get in contact with you.
Sure.
And let us know.
Okay. Yeah. So 2 ways. One, go to Bryant with a T on the end, growthcoaching.com. Reach out to me there. And the other is to search on Facebook for the group called Menopause Moxie, MOXIE, and you can find me there. And I can't wait to meet your followers. I would love to work with them.
Miranda, this has been amazing. Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you.
It's been enlightening.
Yes, I've enjoyed this very much. And I really applaud you for helping bring this once taboo topic to the table. It's really important for the health of our community and the health of our individuals to have this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherri.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mature Allure. For more information about us, visit matureallure.net and get social with us on Instagram and YouTube at mature.allure, Facebook at @4MatureAllure, and Twitter at mature_allure. Till next time, we encourage you to stay positive, embrace who you are at every stage of your life, and always tap into your mature allure.
It's my time.